I'm ChosenArchitect, and this is FTB Genesis. Now today I'm diving into applied energistics, and this is going to be a fundamental change to the pack. We are basically going to open up auto crafting throughout the entirety of our current base here, and everything that we have done prior can now be set up automated, which you're going to hear that word a lot, automation and automated today, and it's because we're going to have access to it. Now, one of the first things I want to mention is applied energistics and unlimited power and channels, because that's what we're gifted with. This desolate world once had access to power, and we have sustainability. This is going to be fantastic. Now, unless the entirety of the config has disabled actual channels, which I don't exactly know at this point, only the things that are connected to the initial controller or the initial creative source will have unlimited channels. So if you make a subnet, which we're actually going to do today, it is going to be limited still by its channels. So you'll have to keep that in mind, and we'll test that out as we get on. But what do we actually need to start applied energistics? Now, this is where we dive into the quest book, and we're going to notice that the charger here, it says now with some materials, we can begin to rebuild the connection of the digital storage within Nexa. Ah, good. The thing we blew up at the beginning. It says a charger will be required, and we will also provide you with an entropy manipulator. Once charged, this device can manipulate the world's temporal energy using AE energy. That's kind of nifty. And so we're going to need this. And temporal energy reminds me of Loki. I love that show. All right, let's go ahead and craft one of these. That should unlock our quest, and the Nexa should give us an entropy manipulator. And this is going to be a good example of how we have unlimited power. So we place this down, it's just going to charge, and then we can start to charge things here and on any of these connected little cables that you'll see strung out through the area. And so this is going to allow us to manipulate a bunch of different things, and it's a pretty cool tool. You can convert like water into ice and change its modes, and convert lava into obsidian by clicking on it, and water into all kinds of different things. And you can basically turn cobble into stone and stone into cobble and stuff like that. It's a pretty neat little tool and definitely worth getting into. Now, Certus Quartz, the thing that we're going to need for the next quest. This right here, we had gotten through the molecular transformer. We put quartz in here, it processes and turns into this. So let's grab some of that I had processing. And there we go. This should complete the quest. And now we get ourselves a flawless budding Certus Quartz, and we get ourselves a Certus Quartz wrench. Now, be very careful of placing this flawless budding Certus Quartz. The only way you can pick it back up after you have placed it is by using Silk Touch. And that's only because the config has been changed to allow you to pick it back up using Silk Touch. Because normally in applied energistics, this is not the case. Once you break this with anything, even Silk Touch, it will turn into a flawed version. So let's go ahead and take this and be very careful with it, because this is where we're actually going to use it later on to create an infinite source of Certus. Now, before we create that infinite source, we're going to have to take a little bit of a tangent, a little bit of a side stretch, and get into Elementalcraft just a little bit. That's right. Elementalcraft is not one of my favorite mods in the world, but it is something that we have to do in this pack in order to create a Silk Touch book, in which we should be able to put in our pneumatic jackhammer and be able to use it as needed for anything that needs Silk Touch. And we also are going to need a Silk Touch book for another thing. Yeah, annihilation planes. Annihilation planes need to be enchanted, and to create basically a Certus farm, we're probably going to want to have that enchanted with this, and we'll get into that in a moment. But first, let's dive a little bit into Elementalcraft. So to touch a little bit on the Elementalcraft, we need to go into the primal forces and kind of discover what this world is holding from us. And for that, we're going to need inert crystals. We're going to turn those into the contained crystals, and we get an enchanted apple from that. This just requires a little bit of gold. And to be able to get these inert crystals, we've needed oil, right? So we do a Pneumaticcraft quest in order to get that. And so expanding that, we're going to get to the elemental extraction, and we're going to need these containers to be able to pull this from the world. Now, for the Silk Touch book specifically, The Silk Touch book requires us to have air silk, and it's also going to require inert crystals. So air silk, in order to make this book, is going to require a little bit of air from Pneumaticcraft, and then we're going to need an infuser, and we infuse string to get this. So let's go through the process of obtaining this, and thankfully in the quest it shows us where an air source is actually located. Now, as I prepare to head back out into the world, I went ahead and crafted up an elemental extractor, a small element container, and an element infuser. These are going to be super important for us to pull the air out. Now, the quest does give us technically a node. It does give us one, which is kind of interesting right here with the choice reward. You will get a receptacle for this, but that's something that we'll worry about a little bit later. I will go ahead though and try to find all of these so we can get another waystone, because waystones were actually updated recently, and now it no longer costs experience to travel from one location to another. So getting another waystone is just going to be nice. So let's first find this one. This is at 111 and then 49. So on our coordinates in the top right, we need to go to 111, and then we need to go to 49, which is going to be out this direction. So it should be just over here, and I think it's this one right here. So we're gonna need a little bit of help getting up there. So I'm going to grab a bit of the salt, and you have to be careful with these. If you place a block into its position, then you're going to delete it. And that is definitely not what we want to do. We want to be very, very careful with this. So let's take this up and make sure not to break this. That would be a bad idea. Now, inside of this, it does show us an example of the way that we want to set this up. So we're going to want the basically the node on top, this underneath, and then that's going to lead into the container below. So we have this, we have a single block space here and a block space here. I'm going to place my containment jar here, and then I should be able to place this on top, and that is then going to pull the element into the container. And that's essentially what we want to do while we go out and hopefully try to locate the other ones. Oh, wow. That was incredibly fast at charging. That was way faster than I was expecting. I almost wonder, has this been modified to make it faster? Because this is normally a very, very slow process. Now, this node was way out here. The other Earth node, that was really, really far out. So now I've located the water one as well. I'm just getting these areas set up to be able to teleport to them down the road. So we should be able to make it to them. And I'm setting waypoints so we can find this location. Hopefully, eventually we can make ourselves a nice amount of waystones. So getting to these locations or caging these up eventually will be easy to do. And last but not least, there's the fire one. And so now we should be able to make Silk Touch. We should be able to now take some string that we have, and we'll place down our little elemental container. And on top, we need to place the elemental infuser. And we just simply need to click the string on here, and that will infuse into the item that's going to allow us to get Silk Touch, which is going to be incredibly important. So now that we have all of this, let's go ahead and accept this and get our reward. Now, I still don't know what container I'm going to choose under the pick rewards, but I am going to grab that waystone. Yeah, the choice reward here, I'm going to save that for later, whenever we fully dive into that section. But we did get some shards, and I did notice that mobs actually drop these shards, so maybe mob farm eventually? Now we need to get back into why you are all here, and that's for Pneumaticcraft. No, I'm just kidding. You're back for Applied Logistics. So let's go ahead and get our Silk Touch put in. I'm going to put all of these items in here. That is going to go in here. And you may be wondering, this looks a little bit different than last time. So while this is processing, what I have done is I put a regulator tube module in here, and this basically gates this pipe. And so that way I can use my advanced, so I can use this single compressor to send exactly 4.9 bar into this network, and basically limiting all of this. Now, this still keeps the high pressure and consumes the fuel. And then I want to talk about this little bit of redstone here, because I did modify it a little bit. I added a comparator onto a hopper into a redstone repeater that then goes over here. And the way that this works is this network will always stay looking to fill the pressure. But what will happen here is if this is empty, this redstone signal goes back, and this will continue to pull the vortex tube back. So this prevents me from having an issue where I run out of fuel and the vortex tube stays pushed in, meaning it's just going to constantly be consuming air, and I don't want that to happen. So I want it to shut off if there is no fuel in the system, and if we are not at the 15 bar. So it's going to shut off after it goes past 15 bar, and it's also going to shut off if we run out of fuel. But later on, we'll have plenty of fuel, so that shouldn't be a problem. So look at there, we have some Silk Touch books, and this is going to be super helpful. Now, we definitely can go ahead and put Silk Touch in here, and we're supposed to be able to Silk Touch, in case we do place it down, our flawless Certus Quartz. So now we need to get back into Applied Energistics and how it's kind of different in this particular setup. So at the moment, we have a regular inscriber that we've been using, and this is kind of odd because what we're going to need to do is, for example, take gold and redstone, and this is how we're going to make our circuits. So gold, redstone, and then we're also going to need the, what are they called? The silicon. There we go, silicon. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take these, which by the way, we've made from the inscriber. And then this comes from crushed quartz. So you crush down the quartz like I'm doing over here. You get the crushed quartz, and then you can smelt that in order to get the silicon. Silicon then goes into the inscriber, which you can just use a hopper. And in this particular version, because we're not on 120, you cannot stack these, and the inscribers still don't work like the advanced. So there are advanced inscribers that we'll be getting into. But yes, now that we have this, well, we just need to place these together, and then that is going to produce the circuit. But we're not done yet, because then we need to take our circuit and it needs to go through our Pneumaticcraft system. So it then needs to go over here, and that will then pick it up, utilizing pressure, by the way. So you will have to maintain fuel and pressure into the system. And so it's going to take that and it's going to convert it into the thing we need, all while maintaining pressure. I only have 4 upgrades because if I put any more in here, it will end up consuming more pressure than we have available. And so there we go. So I think we're going to need some volume upgrades. We can put some volume upgrades in this, which is going to make it have a larger container of air, which should last a bit longer. But perfect. We have the basis of getting processors. And I've got to do this for several processors, at least for the start, until we get automation up. Now, to help with this process, we do get some cables via our quest, which is going to be very nice. We can place them up here. And what I'm going to do is hook up my inscriber up top, and we'll create a very simple automation. Utilizing an omnidirectional hopper, I can place onto the bottom. That's pretty cool, right? So let's get out of here real quick. And so now we can use regular hoppers on the top and bottom, and this will allow me to add in the bottom, and then the top will allow me to add into the top, and the middle will allow me to add into the middle. Now, while this is all processing up and everything, doing all of that, we also probably should automate the charger a little bit. So what I need to do is place in some Certus Quartz. Let's go ahead and do like 16 for right now. In here, that's going to charge, and then it's going to send the charged Certus Quartz down to the hopper below. Thankfully, no longer need to do any kind of filtering. This mod has really gotten nice. Now, darn, as much as I thought this was going to work, I thought having the hopper on top was going to allow the gold to go in, but unfortunately it does not. I have only one way of fixing this, and that's going to be to upgrade this to an advanced version. Now, to make life a little bit easier on us on this inscriber, it's actually quite simple to do. We just need to upgrade this to an advanced version, which requires just 2 diamonds, essentially. So we should be able to take this and we get that upgraded, and no longer do we need this janky hopper setup. Now, funny enough, once you make these processors, you actually get given an advanced inscriber, which is pretty darn cool. And this is going to lead us like directly into auto crafting, believe it or not. So I should now be able to tear this all down. And now the advanced inscriber is going to be a little bit nicer on us, allowing us to not only automate here soon with this inscriber, because it's pretty powerful. We can now put some speed upgrades in because we don't have to worry about power. And now we can just directly put the items in and they should stack. So now they stack here and they process incredibly fast. Now the cool part is when we start making patterns, and this advanced inscriber, oh boy, how it works with the pattern provider. It's so good. By the way, while I'm waiting for my processors to finish up, this gives me a perfect amount of time to pop in and just simply destroy the nether. I am just tearing this place apart, ravaging all of the coal that I can find, trying to grab all of the quartz I can find. We're going to need so much of this stuff. And also definitely grab as much of the mystical agriculture Inferium essence, because you're not going to be able to farm this a normal way. You're going to have to mine it for quite a while. And so you're going to need a lot of this stuff. Now back to the quest. We got our charged Certus Quartz, and so I actually get a little bit more, and we need to turn it into the Fluix crystals. So Fluix crystals are actually pretty easy to make. We just need water, like a bucket of water or a water cell. I think we can place that on the ground. Or we can just use our water source over here. That should also work. But we're going to need redstone, essentially. We need the charged Certus Quartz, and then we also need quartz itself. And this is how we're going to initially get our first first quartz here. So we just drop this all in, and if we give it a moment, it should just spark into all of these items. So perfect. We now have some, and we actually get a little bit more, and we get a dense energy cell for some reason, because we should have infinite power with the creative cell, and so we shouldn't encounter any problems with power, but that's just an item that we get. Okay. So now that we have that, it's about time to get our terminals and our screens up. I think I have everything ready to go. Everything's processed up. And so now it's time to make a couple of terminals. So we should have our system back online, a much bigger table, and we now get a ME drive. We also get an ME conversion monitor, which is interesting, and also some cable anchors. But we get a drive, and if we remember from the very beginning, we actually got some discs sort of given to us right off the bat. So right up top here, we have our storage cells, and we ended up getting 2 free storage cells right from the start that ended up popping out. And I don't know, these don't have anything in them, so they should just be blank, and we should be able to connect this up to the system. Now, there's a couple of other things that we want. We also need a ME storage bus, and the reason why I want this is because I want all of the storage from this to be accessible via our system. And we should have everything we need to craft this. I went ahead and made an interface, and we should be able to make this, but this is why I'm so glad to be moving from RF Tools storage over to Applied Energistics, because unfortunately, RF Tools sometimes isn't smart enough to know that we have an interface in our inventory that will work here. So I'm going to convert this to the one it wants, and it still doesn't work, as you can see. So I need both my pistons, because we have all of the ingredients, but you can see sometimes it just doesn't want to craft the ingredients. So let's put them together, and now we have our storage bus, but we can still use this as a storage solution. But let's go ahead and do that. So let's get our, basically our screens set up. So I'm going to place my terminal on here, and then let's go ahead and place our storage right here. And I'm just going to simply put a storage bus on it. And then we need to carry our cables that are in here, our flux cables. And let's go ahead and just move that over. But what I want to do is I want to increase the priority to 1, making sure that anything we pull out and put in all get pulled from this first for right now. And then anything else can go into our ME drive that is right here. And then we can put our drives in it. So that's pretty cool. So now we should be able to technically access all of our inventory here, and that is stored inside here. So we've essentially converted our crafts over, and this is where things get really powerful. Now for the moment that you've probably been waiting for, and you're probably pretty excited for, and that's the automation of the Certus Quartz, which is ultimately going to give us the power to expand our entire network with Applied Energistics. So how do we do this? So we are given an initial flawed budding Certus Quartz, and what we're going to need to do is use some crystal growth accelerators. And the crystal growth accelerators are going to speed the growth up. And because we have power that is abundant, it's going to be quite nice. I want to place these on the side so we can chain them together. But notice this is going to improve the growth. You could place them on their own and just let them grow over time, but this is going to make it go so much faster, and especially when we have this whole thing surrounded with 4 of them. And I do believe that this can also grow crops faster. I don't know if it can grow saplings faster. That's something definitely worth testing. Now, we have this in place, and this is where subnets are going to come into play, because we're going to play around with an annihilation plane. Now, keep in mind that you are going to need this Silk Touch book if you ever want to move a flawed budding Certus Quartz. So that's why I showed getting that Silk Touch book. So let's make a subnet. And this is how the annihilation planes are going to work. And we're going to use a barrel as an inventory. And what we want to do is we want this to grow to its largest bud. And then we want to harvest that. Now, for that to work, we're going to have to tell it something very specific. Because if it breaks this, if we were to break this right now at its current stage, it drops dust. But when it's broken at its full grown stage, it drops full Certus Quartz. So what we can do is we should be able to tell the system by having, for example, a barrel right here. We should be able to tell the system to, hey, with a storage bus, we want you to only give us Certus, the actual Certus itself. And that means that the annihilation plane should only break this when it's at its fullest. And if we wanted to switch this, we could say, hey, give us dust. But for right now, it's at its fullest. And then we're going to make a subnet. And this is how, it's hard to explain this, but this is kind of how the annihilation plane works. It essentially needs an inventory to place the items that it breaks into. Otherwise, it's just going to break and just leave them floating around. So to make a subnet, we're just going to use a quartz fiber, and this is going to transfer the power, but not the channels, to this cable. And so now this cable is on a separate line of channels, technically. And that means we should be able to place this in here with an annihilation plane. And now that that is fully grown, it's going to place the Certus Quartz inside here, but only when it is fully grown. And this essentially is going to automate our Certus Quartz harvesting. Notice how right now it's not the tallest, it's the smallest. But if we wanted to change this, and let's say we did want Certus Dust instead, if we add Certus Dust to this equation, then it will break it and it will put that Certus Dust in here. But in my case, I want Certus Quartz crystals, and we can also up our game even more. If we were to put Fortune 3 on this, or Fortune, by enchanting this in an anvil with a book, we can actually use this to fortune blocks. And so this essentially has automated this one process here. And so what we might be able to do is also have some setups that just farm the dust as well. Now, once this inventory fills up with Certus Quartz, this will actually stop working, and we should end up with an annihilation plane that's not going to break anything because there's nowhere for the item to go once it breaks it, which is great because we don't want it to do that. But what I want to do is I want to use this as a container that is going to store our Certus crystal, and we need to get that back and accessible via our storage here. Now, to do this, what we want to do is we want to attach a cable on our main line, not the subnet, but on our main line, and on the storage bus here, I'm going to go ahead and set the priority to higher. You can set it to whatever, 14, 1000, doesn't really matter, just so that it's higher, and it needs to be the highest. And then what I want to do is I want to set and partition this storage based on its current contents. By clicking that button, it's super easy. It's seen what's in here, and it's easily able to just filter the item that's inside. So now we should only ever be able to insert and extract Certus Quartz from this container, and that should make things a lot easier to automate. So now that we have all of that Certus that is built up, I can now upgrade with some accelerators. So by simply adding an accelerator here, I'm going to put this in our offhand so it's easy to place, we can go ahead and grow this incredibly fast. So no longer are we going to have problems anymore. This is just going to work and work relatively quick now that we have all of these on here. By the way, wanted to say super shout out to those in the Discord while I was recording this episode. You know who you are. Thank you for the inspiration for this setup behind me, because I had a whole convoluted setup that I was going to do before experiencing this one. Yes, I do chill out on the Discord, and I hang out in voice chat all the time. So check it out, discord.gg/ChosenArchitect. So guys, now that we have access to Certus Quartz, it really starts to open up Applied Energistics. And now we're going to have the ability to essentially make all kinds of auto crafting components, and we're going to work on that next episode. It's going to be all about auto crafting and how we can set tons and tons of automations up already. And yes, things are only going to expand from here, and I hope you guys are enjoying thus far. If you are, be sure to click that subscribe button if you haven't already, and give this video a huge thumbs up to help that algorithm. Might want to even try commenting down below, since I would really appreciate it. All engagement is what YouTube wants, and we got to feed that beast. Oh, goodness, YouTube. And without further ado, I do want to thank the supporter of today's episode, and that is going to go out to Igneous Inferius. Thank you so much for your amazing support, by the way, over on the Discord, becoming a Discord premium member, and honestly, supporting in one of the best ways possible. And that is by becoming a premium member over on the Discord, discord.gg/ChosenArchitect. Be sure to check it out. Guys, thank you so much. I do appreciate it. Hope to see you in the next one. And as always, thanks for watching. Bye.